And so,
But I mean, is there
but
examples
yeah,
of athletes?
yeah. I mean, I can tell you, I've had many athletes who were just average athletes in high school and went on to be uh, all Americans. Uh, I had a young fella. He was actually had his sister. His sister was a cross country athlete, and she used to train in high school. It was Becky Ingram, and she used to train in high school, and they would just do Diet Coke and just do this and do that. And her dad came to me and said, "Hey, Becky's not strong." And actually he came to me because they were really concerned because she was bonking out. She was blanking out on practices. I mean, some of these athletes are so headstrong. They'll work right through the point to where they could have a heart attack. They could crash seriously. So so we finally got her on a simple supplement carbohydrate program, easily simulated product I called electrocarbs at the time. And what it was a crystalline fructose and maltodextrins with a balance of electrolytes. Now, this was important because she went from bonking out to being a star on her team at Annapolis and continued on. But that's case after case like that. I've had athletes, I had a couple of athletes, these bodybuilders that came to me. Actually, one of them was Mr. America, I believe it was. And Anthony came to me and he said, "Hey, we heard you can help me gain this mass and cut." So Anthony was 245 pounds, ripped, shredded. I mean, his muscles and his glutes were shredded. But he had the toughest time because in cutting, he couldn't cut. He'd work out and do aerobics and go on for hours, just train and train and train. And he was tapping into the carnitine transfer or carnitine shuttle, whatever people like to call it. But basically, it's utilizing of the release of fatty acids into the bloodstream, into the muscle, where it then can be used in the mitochondria. But if you don't have the proper chemicals in the process, proper enzyme production, then the fatty acids won't be utilized in the muscle. So the tissue, adipose tissue, will just keep on storing it. So that's what happens with a lot of these athletes. They get to that point. So with Anthony, I added some carnitine product, and we had him start to take some carbohydrate. A lot of these bodybuilders, they just don't want to. These bodybuilders just don't want to deal with carbohydrates and calories. So in their mind, that's a calorie. No, that's fat. Oh, that's this. Again, they just don't understand what's going on as far as biochemistry. So they harm themselves. But by just activating the pathway, now with the aerobic conditioning, now stay in an anaerobic phase where he's utilizing fat for ATP production, had more energy, was cutting his body fat, becoming leaner, and was able to win the championship. And then we had another guy. He was a power lifter. So almost every athlete, every sport you can think of, I've had athletes in it, whether it be basketball, track, whatever it is. But I'll give you one example. This one guy from Alabama, Barry LaFoy. He called me and he was in college. And he told me, "Hey Jim, I want to be a national champion. I want to be a world record, world champion." Now this is a guy that comes out of nowhere, so that's a high expectation he had. So I said, "Barry, if you do everything I tell you to do, and you You don't fudge on it. I think we'll be able to do it. We'll do it. You know, Barry ended up at the 141 pounds being the national champion in powerlifting. So, and I just put him on a regimen to maintain his weight and to maximize healing, prevent inflammation, and recovery. And that's how he did it. So we did it predominantly by looking at these foods, but most of all, applying macronutrients and micronutrients at optimum times when the body's hormones would be maximized. So maximizing micronutrients would be when you wake up, human growth hormones high, 2 hours after you go to bed, high, after training, high. And so the worst thing you do is take solid food there or take nothing and at those optimum times, because now the hormones, they're not going to get what they want. You're going to cause negative thermogenesis. You're going to cause cachexia, and you're going to cause muscle wasting, and you're just going to spin wheels. That's pretty much, a few of the people, but there's quite a few. I mean, there's entire teams. The Boston College basketball team one year, they went out to university. They went out to Hawaii in a Christmas tournament. The whole team was on pre-post, one of our products, So a lot of things. Naval Academy was another one.
Let's go back to inflammation, because I mean that is such a topic nowadays. When you start talking about inflammation and the different responses to it, can eating certain foods cause more inflammation in your body than other just regular things, or what really causes inflammation is probably a better.
Disease can cause inflammation. Injury can cause inflammation. Genetic problem can cause an inflammatory condition. So inflammation can be accentuated or initiated through a variety of ways, but usually cancer, all diseases are associated with inflammation. So all this COVID-19 scare, and is the same thing with the flu. Well, what is the problem there? Well, you can't breathe. You have all these things going on. These things cause infections that lead to inflammation. So you have to remove the cause of what's causing the inflammation. So in certain diseases, so if somebody has lung problems, well, you have a lung problem, you have inflammation. You need to deal with it. And of course, doctors, what they use is their drugs. But if you're eating foods that aren't supporting the anti-inflammatory effect of foods, then you're creating an environment which isn't beneficial. So these are the problems that have to be solved by each individual. So if you're an athlete and you're in a combative competition, you're an MMA. I had one MMA guy, man, he was an animal. And everything we talked about is what you have to, and you can train and train and train. You can out-train somebody because you're just gifted that way. But the reality of it, you can be gifted and improve even that by optimizing your energy production without causing an inflammatory effect. So injury through training is what leads to probably the most problems with inflammation. Now we say through training. So you got a mom and dad, they like to go out and train. The kids like to jog. Everybody runs around jogging. Well, that takes a pounding on your body. Anybody out there jogging, hiking, whatever it is, your body's taking a beating. A gymnast, 100-pound gymnast, doing a flip and landing on her feet creates 1,500 pounds of pressure per square inch on her balls of her feet. Now, that's a lot of pressure, and that travels all the way up through the entire skeletal system. That's creating inflammation. Later on, you may not feel it now, but I've had high school athletes come to me, and they were taking lots of aspirin because their coaches and everybody told them, take the aspirin, take the time, take these things, right? Well, they're coming to me and they got blood coming out of their stomach. They're tearing up their stomach with this aspirin because they would take handfuls of aspirin after their training. These are high school kids and college kids. So that it's easy here, take an aspirin, that causes an inflammatory condition, causes bleeding. So one single bare aspirin, as soon as it hits your stomach, starts to cause interstitial bleeding. It breaks down the capillaries. That's the bottom line on that.
All right. So let me switch things up. We've been talking about food. We're talking about what to eat. I want to talk about hydration.
Hydration.
Yeah, because hydration is, misconceived a lot. And when people, athletes, you're a weekend warrior, you're out jogging, you're doing your workouts and so forth. When you think about being well balanced, nutrition, the intake of food is one thing, but hydration is another. What are some ways or thoughts on, how to stay hydrated during a training session or during competition?
Hydration has it transcends every aspect of the athlete. From the time you wake up, sleeping, to performance, to recovery, rest, whatever it may be. Hydration is probably not considered by coaches and everybody. You hear people, they say, "Oh, stay hydrated." What are we talking about when we say hydration? How do you stay hydrated? What's the purpose of staying hydration? Well, I mentioned earlier negative thermogenesis. Well, negative thermogenesis is induced by food. Food can cause negative thermogenesis, which can lead to an inflammatory problem. Okay? You have environmental thermogenesis, which requires hydration, dealing with it. And then you have the negative thermogenesis, which is overtraining. Okay? So here we have heat production, negative thermogenesis. We have heat production. And so hydration has the ability to keep the body cool, to cool each cell. The worst thing you can do is not release the heat built up from the production of energy. Remember, chemical activity, right? Heat, light, and energy. So light, that's nice, okay. Energy, great, okay. But heat, where's the heat going? Well, in a car, it's great because your car has the radiator and the coolant, and it keeps the engine cool no matter how hot it gets. But something goes wrong, and that heat exchange isn't able to take place. The car stops. Well, in the human body, the car doesn't stop. The body keeps performing in a very dangerous situation. So when it overheats, and the problem is, how do you deal with that? So everybody says, well, just make sure you get enough of water. Well, what is enough of water? I want to talk to all these strength coaches. I want to talk to your coach. So, hey, you and I, we're going to go into competition. We got our team ready this week. How about Vandy beating Alabama, huh? You think maybe it was the hydration problem? So anyway, so that was amazing. So anyway, hydration is crucial. And what are we talking about? Oh, what, 8 ounces of water? Should I drink a whole quart of water? Well, that would be crazy because that's going to affect my performance because it takes 15 minutes for 8 ounces of water to empty out of your digestive system, out of the stomach. So what good is having 32 ounces of water? It's not going to help your performance. All you're going to be doing is carrying out a couple of pounds of water extra on your performance. And it's not going to be cooling you off at all. So hydration goes way down to a real simple problem. One is the timing, and then two is the process called sodium-potassium pump. Now, I don't know if any coaches or any athletes, anybody even concerns themselves with it, but the sodium-potassium pump is so important because, and not just for athletes, for every one of us, because it regulates the fluids and micronutrients. So in other words, sodium potassium pump will exchange waste product through a variety of ways, through your skin or through the kidneys, whatever way is viable. And then what happens is it maintains important nutrients like L-glutamine. It will maintain if it needs it. In a sodium potassium pump, the purpose is to get rid of sodium and hold potassium. Potassium is important for nerve conduction, for muscle contraction. And the ratio is basically the 3 out of sodium to potassium in. Potassium in, sodium out. That's the whole thing. So how do you stay hydrated? Oh, just drink more water? No, because you can drink what they tell you. Don't drink the water. If you're stranded in the ocean, you can't drink the water. Why? Because the concentration of sodium is going to be so high that the sodium potassium pump's not going to work. So therefore, your body's going to overheat. Therefore, inflammation is going to develop, and then you're going to have a fatigue factor set in. You're going to get into anaerobic. Every negative thing you can think of happens. Now, the aspect of water, it's not just water. It's not just the stuff that comes out of the tap. We developed a water filter years ago, and it was important because it took out unwanted chemicals but maintained important nutrients. For example, you can't just drink water. The water has to be viable for an environment for cell activity to take place. Calcium. If your water doesn't have calcium, you got problems. If it doesn't have magnesium, you got problems. If it doesn't have potassium, even sodium.
What if they put fluoride in it? Does that help?
Fluoride is like the nutsiest thing you can do. There is fluoride in water, but in very small amounts in nature. But what's happened is they added fluoride to stop the decay, supposedly to stop decay, but it doesn't stop decay. It causes fluorosis. So it's pretty crazy stuff. But look at the important minerals. Zinc is in water. It supports the immune system. It helps with wound healing. It's important for DNA synthesis. So you want to know what macronutrients do? Copper. Who thinks of copper in your water, you know? Well, why is copper important? Because copper is important for iron metabolism and the formation of red blood cells. Whoa! What? Formation of red blood cells? Iron metabolism? Iron is necessary for hemoglobin exchange. Red blood cells get rid of waste. It brings oxygen back and forth. It just goes on and on. So it's important that we understand what we're actually doing. For example, sodium out, potassium in. Potassium in electrolyte formula is important for muscle and nerve function. Now, you want an athlete to be effective? That's a micronutrient that's important. Regulates your heartbeat. So why are these athletes just dropping dead? These young athletes on football fields and track and everywhere else, they're dropping dead on basketball courts and everywhere. Another one is magnesium. 300 biochemical activities in it, and it's important for blood glucose control. Oh boy, blood glucose control. That's how important is that? So now these are the type of things that you don't think about. So if you're going to create an electrolyte formula, you don't just throw all these things together. There's ratios, and then there's the amount.
Most of the electrolyte formulas nowadays are just filled with simple sugars and dyes, right? I mean, that's what they push. That's what everybody kind of says forward.
Yeah, and they do. I have seen ever since in the 60s when they came out with you had to take salt tablets. Yeah. So Gatorade created their existence on coming out with Gatorade. It's the stupidest product for an athlete that was ever made. There's never a dumber product than Gatorade. And yet they deceived everybody, and all the genius strength coaches and all the genius athletic coaches, they all said, oh, get Gatorade? Dumb, dumb, dumb. So the reality of it was high in sodium, low in potassium, and had dyes and coloration, everything that you might as well have swill water, I mean, it was stupid. So, but we did it. We used to take salt tablets. The more salt tablets we could take, the better. It was dumb. I should have been drinking salt. My coaches should have been giving me salt water, So the reality of it is, though, hydration is the key.
Let me ask you